The truck's engine rumbled to a stop, echoing against the quiet row of aging houses. The October wind carried the scent of rain and rust as 16-year-old Lena Parker stepped out, clutching her backpack like a lifeline. The house loomed before her, 2 stories of peeling white paint, dark windows, and ivy crawling like veins across its stone foundation. Her mother, Rachel, stood beside her, keys trembling in hand, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes.
"This is it,"
Rachel said softly.
"Home."
Lena looked up at the sagging roof and broken shutters. Home? It felt more like a forgotten museum exhibit, something left behind and meant to stay that way. But she nodded, not wanting to start another argument. They'd had enough of those lately. After her father's debts, the foreclosure, and the quiet shame of leaving behind everything they once owned. Inside, the air was heavy. Dust floated in thick ribbons through shafts of weak afternoon light. The living room smelled faintly of damp wood and something older, like mold mixed with perfume. Lena's sneakers stuck slightly to the floor as she walked, the boards groaning beneath her weight. Rachel busied herself unpacking, pretending not to notice the chill. "Your grandfather kept the place closed up since your grandmother died. We'll air it out." Lena drifted toward the staircase. Her reflection flickered in a dusty mirror on the wall, pale, tired eyes framed by messy brown hair. She reached out to touch the glass, and it wobbled slightly, revealing a tiny gap between the mirror and the wall. She frowned, but said nothing. That evening, the wind picked up. Curtains fluttered though the windows were shut. Lena sat cross-legged on the bare floor of her new room, scrolling through her phone, the weak signal making every page crawl. The house groaned around her, slow, deep creaks that felt almost rhythmic, like breathing. She paused her music, listening. Nothing. Then faintly she thought she heard a single knock from somewhere above. "Mom," she called out. "In the kitchen," Rachel answered, her voice too bright. "Just the pipes, honey. Old house sounds." Lena forced a laugh. Right. Pipes. But she didn't quite believe it. Later, as night fell, Rachel brought in 2 mugs of cocoa. They sat on the couch, the only piece of furniture they'd managed to move in. The yellow lamplight made the shadows seem thicker, longer. "Your granddad loved this place," Rachel said quietly. "He built half of it himself. Every beam, every nail." Lena smiled faintly. "He also built it before Wi-Fi existed. Total nightmare." Rachel laughed, and for a moment it felt almost normal. 2 people starting over. But as Rachel got up to fetch her blanket, Lena's eyes wandered to the ceiling. A dark stain spread slowly across the plaster, almost like a shadow moving. When her mother returned, she noticed Lena staring. "Don't worry about the attic," Rachel said quickly. "It leaks sometimes. I'll fix it tomorrow." Lena hadn't mentioned the attic. She looked at her mother, startled, but Rachel was already turning off the light. That night, lying in bed, Lena couldn't sleep. The air seemed to hum with something unseen. Each creak in the floorboards felt deliberate, like footsteps stopping right outside her door. She closed her eyes, willing the noise away. But just before sleep finally took her, she thought she heard it again. A faint whisper that sounded almost like her name. And somewhere above, in the attic, something shifted. Morning came gray and heavy, the air thick with that same smell of dampness. Lena barely slept. Her dreams were filled with faint whispers and the echo of footsteps that didn't belong to anyone she could see. When she woke, sunlight was leaking weakly through the curtains, and somewhere above, something thumped once, like a slow heartbeat in the ceiling. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "The attic," she muttered. Her mother's words from last night, "Don't worry about the attic," had sounded more like a warning than reassurance. After breakfast, Rachel left for work at the small diner downtown. Don't go poking around too much, she said with a forced smile. This place is old. Things can fall apart easily. As soon as the car pulled out of the driveway, the house fell silent again. Lena stood at the base of the attic stairs, flashlight in hand. Each step groaned beneath her as if resenting her weight. The air grew colder the higher she climbed, dust swirling in tiny spirals under her beam of light. At the top, the attic door resisted when she turned the knob, then opened with a long sigh. The space was larger than she expected. Half-finished walls, cobwebs like lace, and old furniture draped in yellowed sheets. The smell hit her immediately. Old wood and something metallic underneath. She began to explore. Boxes labeled Parker Family 1986 sat stacked beside a trunk tied shut with fraying rope. She knelt beside it, trying to lift the lid, but it was locked with a rusted latch. Her flashlight flicked across the far wall, and that's when she saw it. A faint rectangular outline beneath a sheet of peeling floral wallpaper. She stepped closer. The seam was too precise to be a crack. The wallpaper bulged slightly where the boards met. Lena ran her fingertips over it. Cool, smooth, definitely wood. "That's weird," she whispered. She pressed her ear against the wall. Nothing. Yeah, no sound. But her pulse quickened anyway. She grabbed a corner of the paper and tugged gently. It tore with a dry hiss, revealing the edge of what looked unmistakably like a door frame. A sudden noise downstairs made her jump, the slam of the front door. "Mom?" she called. Silence. She waited, listening hard, but no answer came. The house was still again. By the time Rachel's actual car rolled into the driveway an hour later, Lena had cleaned up the scraps of wallpaper and pretended to be doing homework. Her mother stepped in, her face pale from the cold. "How was work?" Lena asked casually. Rachel hung up her coat. "Quiet day? You?" Lena hesitated. "I went up to the attic." Rachel froze mid-motion. "You what?" "I just wanted to see it. There's something weird up there, like an outline or—" Rachel's voice sharpened. "Lena, listen to me." She grabbed her daughter's hand, her grip trembling. "You stay out of that attic. Promise me." "Why? It's just a door or something. Maybe Grandpa stored things." "No." Rachel's tone turned cold, her eyes glistening with something between fear and anger. "Some rooms are better left closed. Do you understand?" Lena stared, startled by the edge in her voice. "Yeah. Okay. Sure." Rachel let go and walked away quickly, leaving the air between them tense and uneasy. Lena watched her mother's back, noticing how her shoulders shook slightly as she poured herself a drink. That night, as the wind rattled the attic windows, Lena couldn't stop thinking about the seam in the wall, the way it looked, deliberate, hidden, like someone had wanted it to disappear. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing that faint thumping again above her bed. Slow, steady, almost like footsteps. By midnight, she whispered to herself, "If she doesn't tell me what's up there, I'll find out myself." The house had a way of breathing when the sun went down. Wood settling, pipes murmuring, wind pressing through unseen cracks. All those little sounds that filled the silence until silence became something else. But this was different. Lena knew it. She'd grown up in old houses before. They didn't whisper your name. It started 2 nights after her mother's warning. Lena had been lying in bed, half asleep, when she heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps above her room. The attic. They stopped for a moment, then came again, pacing slowly, back and forth. She froze, eyes open in the dark, holding her breath. "Mom?" she called out weakly. No answer. The sound continued, steady, purposeful. Then, silence. The next morning, she brought it up over breakfast. "There was someone in the attic last night." Rachel didn't even look up from her coffee. "Old house, honey. Sound travels." It wasn't pipes, Lena pressed. It was footsteps. Her mother's hands tightened around the mug. Lena, please, let it go. But Lena couldn't. That night, she set her phone on the nightstand and hit record, just to prove it to herself. The first few hours were uneventful. A distant dog barking, the hum of the fridge. Then, sometime past midnight, she woke suddenly, her heart racing. There it was again. Footsteps, a dragging sound. And then, whispering. It was faint, almost drowned by the creak of the floorboards, but unmistakable. A voice, soft, female. Words she couldn't quite catch. She sat up, staring at the ceiling, the flashlight from her phone trembling in her hand. "Who's there?" she whispered. The sound stopped instantly, as if whoever, or whatever, had been moving heard her. The next morning, Lena played back the recording. At first, nothing. Then, at 1:37 a.m., she heard it clearly. A whisper, slow, breathy, a single word. Lena. She dropped the phone. It clattered onto the floor, or the sound echoing too loudly in the quiet kitchen. She stood there shaking, her pulse pounding in her ears. When Rachel walked in moments later, Lena stammered, "Someone was saying my name, on the recording, from the attic." Rachel's face went white. She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the phone like it was something dangerous. Finally, she muttered, "Delete it." "What?" "Delete it, Lena. Don't listen to that stuff. It's old wiring, bad acoustics, your mind's playing tricks." Lena wanted to argue, but there was something in her mother's eyes. Fear, not frustration. She deleted the file, but the sound was still in her head. That voice, her name. That night she couldn't bring herself to sleep. Every little creak made her flinch. Around 2 in the morning she heard it again, only this time it wasn't from the attic. It was closer. The whisper slid through the crack under her door, faint but unmistakable. "Lena." She sat up, heart hammering, clutching her blanket. When she finally gathered the courage to open the door, the hallway was empty. But a faint draft drifted down from the attic hatch above, moving her hair ever so slightly. She stared up at it, fear and curiosity twisting together. Whatever was up there wasn't finished with her. By morning, Lena's nerves were raw. She hadn't slept again. Every time she closed her eyes, that voice whispered through her mind. Lena. Always soft, always near. The attic door creaked once at dawn, a sound that made her jump so hard she spilled water across the nightstand. She dressed quickly and left the house before her mother woke, desperate for air that didn't smell like dust and secrets. The street was quiet except for the wind scraping through brittle trees. Across the road, a small figure stood by a wrought iron gate. An elderly woman wrapped in a faded blue shawl, feeding crumbs to a cluster of crows. When she noticed Lena, the woman smiled faintly. "You must be Rachel's girl." Lena hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. We just moved in." The woman wiped her hands on her shawl. "I'm Mrs. Whitmore. Lived here near 50 years. That house of yours, I knew the man who built it." Lena glanced back at the looming structure. "My grandfather?" Mrs. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "That's what she told you, hmm?" The words prickled at Lena's skin. "What do you mean?" The old woman leaned closer. "Your mother never told you what happened in that house, did she? That man, the one who lived there before her, he kept too many secrets. Strange noises, locked rooms, people coming and going at night. Some never left." Lena swallowed hard. "You're saying he—" Mrs. Whitmore raised a hand sharply. "I'm saying stay out of that attic, dear. There are things up there that don't want to be remembered." A chill crawled down Lena's back. "You've heard them too, haven't you?" she whispered. The woman's expression turned distant.
Heard? Child. I saw. Once.
Her gaze drifted toward the house, voice softening. Some memories have teeth. Best not to feed them. Before Lena could ask more, Mrs. Whitmore turned away, shuffling toward her porch. The crows lifted into the gray sky, cawing as if to punctuate her warning. When Lena returned home, Rachel was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing the counter with unnecessary force. The tension in the air hit her like a wall.
Where were you?
Rachel asked, not looking up.
Just talking to a neighbor,
Lena said cautiously.
Mrs. Whitmore.
Rachel froze. The rag slipped from her hand.
What did she say? Nothing, really. Just that Grandpa built the house and...
Lena. Her mother's voice cut through like glass.
Don't talk to that woman again. Why? She was nice. She said she knew him. She didn't know him,
Rachel snapped, spinning around.
She made up stories, told lies about our family. She's not well.
Lena stepped back, startled by the sudden anger in her mother's eyes. I didn't mean to upset you, I just... Rachel took a deep breath, closing her eyes.
Please, honey. Some people around here like to stir up ghosts. Don't listen to them.
Lena nodded slowly, but inside, her mind raced. Her mother's reaction wasn't defensive. It was fearful, and that fear said more than any words ever could. That night, Lena sat at her window, staring at Mrs. Whitmore's house across the street. The lights were off, but she could see a faint movement behind the curtains, a shadow shifting as if someone were watching. Her phone buzzed suddenly with a low notification tone. One new voicemail. No number displayed. She pressed play. Static filled the room, followed by a faint, trembling voice. You shouldn't have gone up there. Lena's heart stopped. The message ended in a harsh click. She turned toward the attic ceiling above her, the air around her suddenly colder. Whatever secret her mother was hiding, it wasn't finished with them yet. The next afternoon, the house sat in its usual stillness, heavy, watching, waiting. Rachel had left early for a double shift, leaving a note on the counter. Dinner in the fridge. Don't go upstairs. Love you. Lena read the note twice, then looked up at the ceiling. The warning felt less like concern and more like a challenge. The voicemail from last night still echoed in her head. You shouldn't have gone up there. Whoever had sent it knew something, and she was done being scared of shadows. By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, she was standing at the base of the attic stairs with a flashlight and a screwdriver. Her heart thudded in her chest as she climbed. Each step moaned beneath her like a voice begging her to stop. But she didn't. At the top, the attic was cloaked in a hazy half-light, dust dancing in the air like falling ash. The wallpapered wall waited for her, pale and peeling, that faint rectangular outline still visible beneath the faded flowers. She traced the seam again, her pulse quickening. Then, gripping the screwdriver, she slid the tip beneath the edge of the wallpaper and pried. The paper tore away in long, dry strips, revealing wooden boards that had been crudely nailed shut. The nails were old, rusted, as if they'd been there for decades. It took her 15 minutes to pull them all out. When the final nail dropped with a soft clink, she pressed her palm against the board. It gave slightly, hollow behind it. Heart racing, she pushed harder. A narrow passage opened, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. The air inside was colder, thick with dust and the sour scent of rot. She switched on her flashlight and stepped in. The beam cut through the dark, landing on something that made her freeze. A small wooden door at the end of the passage. It was padlocked. Lena knelt, hands trembling. The lock was old, the metal corroded. She pulled a hairpin from her pocket, something she'd seen in videos but never tried for real. Her fingers shook as she twisted it in the keyhole. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a faint click, the lock gave way. The door creaked open, releasing a rush of stale, icy air. Inside was a small room, barely 10 feet wide, lit only by the narrow beam of her flashlight. The floor was littered with old furniture, a broken chair, a wooden table, a chest split open at the hinges. But what caught her breath, what rooted her to the spot, were the walls. They were covered in photographs, hundreds of them. Old, yellowing Polaroids pinned and taped in uneven rows. Faces of young women staring out from the dark. Some smiling, others terrified. A few had their eyes scratched out. Names and dates were scrawled beneath them in shaky handwriting. Lena's flashlight flickered as she stepped closer. Her stomach turned at the smell of mold and something else, something metallic and unmistakable. Blood. Her hand brushed over one of the photos and she flinched. The image was of a girl not much older than her, wearing a necklace identical to the one Rachel always wore. "No," Lena whispered. She backed away, nearly tripping over the broken chair. Something shifted behind her, a faint scraping sound. She spun around, flashlight darting across the room, but there was no one there. Just the sound of the door slowly creaking shut. Panic surged. She lunged forward, grabbing the handle just before it clicked closed. Forcing it open, she stumbled back into the attic, gasping, slamming it behind her. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She needed proof, something real. She turned the flashlight back toward the seam and snapped a quick photo before racing downstairs. By the time she reached the kitchen, her breathing had steadied, until she checked the P. Couture. In the frame, behind the half-open door, a faint silhouette stood in the darkness. A woman, pale, smiling. And on the table beside her, Lena could see a box, a small metal box, glinting under the beam of her flashlight. The same box she would find the next day, the one filled with tapes. Sleep never came that night. Lena lay wide-eyed beneath her blanket, her phone clutched in her hand, staring at the picture she'd taken in the attic. The faint silhouette, the pale smile, the metal box glinting in the dark. She told herself it was just a trick of the light. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. By morning, her curiosity had curdled into something heavier, dread mixed with obsession. She couldn't stop thinking about that box. Every creak from the attic made her flinch. Every silence felt full of eyes. Rachel left for work early again, avoiding Lena's gaze. "Lock the doors," she said too casually. "And don't go upstairs. Promise me." Lena nodded, but her mind was already made up. The attic greeted her like a mouth opening wide. Dust motes swirled through the light as she climbed back up, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The hidden passage waited for her, the seams of the door still visible, slightly ajar from the night before. She hesitated only a moment before pulling it open. The stench was worse now, damp and metallic. The photographs still lined the walls, their ghostly faces seeming to turn toward her as she stepped inside again. But her eyes went straight to the small metal box sitting on the table. It was heavier than it looked, cold against her palms. The latch creaked when she opened it, revealing rows of black VHS tapes neatly stacked inside, each labeled with a strip of yellowing paper. The names were all women. Cara, 1989. Elaine, 1992. Marcia, 1996. Each one had a date written beneath it, years apart, always in the same shaky handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she sifted through the tapes. Some were stained, others warped by time. Near the bottom, one label caught her breath. Written dark, fresher than the rest. "Rachel, 2001. Her stomach dropped. She stared at the name for a long time, her reflection staring back at her from the glossy surface of the tape. Why would my mother's name be here? A part of her didn't want to know, but another part, stronger, more desperate, needed the truth. She stuffed the tape into her jacket pocket, closed the box, and backed out of the hidden room. The moment she crossed the attic threshold, she swore she heard something behind her. A faint scraping, like a chair being dragged. Downstairs, her hands shook as she searched the living room closet until she found an old VCR player covered in dust. She plugged it into the TV, her pulse pounding in her ears. The tape slid in with a mechanical click. For a long moment, the screen was black, then static. Then, a dimly lit room. The camera was unsteady, the frame tilted. A young woman sat in a chair, crying softly. She looked terrified. Behind her, someone moved. A tall man whose face stayed in shadow.
Please,
the woman whispered. Lena's breath caught. The girl looked familiar. The shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw.
Mom,
she breathed. The man reached out, stroking the woman's hair almost tenderly. You're my favorite, he said in a low, trembling voice. You'll understand soon. Then the screen cut to static again, the tape clicking to an end. Lena sat frozen, her chest tight, bile rising in her throat. The walls seemed to close in around her. The man's voice, that calm, hollow tone, echoed in her mind. She'd heard it before, faintly, in old family videos. It was her grandfather. Tears burned her eyes as she ejected the tape. Her hands shook so hard it nearly slipped. How much had Rachel known? Had she seen this? Helped him? The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made her jump. Her mother was home. Lena grabbed the tape and shoved it under her bed. The front door creaked open, and Rachel's voice floated through the hall.
Lena, you home?
Lena forced her breathing steady.
Yeah, I'm here,
she called back, her voice barely audible. Rachel's footsteps approached, slow, careful. Good. We need to talk. Lena's heart pounded as she glanced toward her room, toward the hidden truth under her bed. The house felt smaller when Rachel came in, like the walls themselves were listening. She dropped her purse on the counter, glancing at Lena with that same forced smile she always used when something was wrong.
Did you go upstairs?
She asked casually, too casually. Lena hesitated. Her heart thudded in her chest.
No,
she lied. Rachel's eyes lingered on her for a moment too long.
Good,
she said softly, taking off her coat.
You shouldn't. That place, it's not for you.
The weight of the VHS tape under Lena's bed burned in her mind like a live wire. She couldn't stand it anymore.
Mom, she said quietly, we need to talk.
Rachel froze mid-step.
About what?
Lena swallowed hard.
The attic.
Her mother's face drained of color. For a moment, she looked like a ghost herself.
Lena,
she said sharply,
I told you.
I found the room. Silence. Rachel's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes glistened with something between anger and fear.
You shouldn't have gone in there.
There were photographs, Lena continued, her voice trembling.
And tapes.
One of them had your name on it. Rachel's hand went to her mouth as if to hold in a scream.
Oh, God, she whispered. You watched it?
Lena nodded, tears welling.
Who was that man? Why was Grandpa—
Rachel stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table for support.
Stop,
she begged.
Please, Lena, just stop.
But Lena didn't.
He was hurting those women, wasn't he? He filmed them. All of them. And you knew.
Rachel sank into a chair, trembling. Her voice came out small, broken.
I didn't understand back then. I was just a little girl.
Lena stood there, unable to move. The clock ticked loudly between them. Rachel's eyes darted toward the window, unfocused, lost in memory.
He was a police officer, you know. Everyone trusted him. People came to him when they were scared. Women who thought someone was following them, who needed protection. He'd bring them here, to this house. Said he'd keep them safe. Her words fell like stones into silence. Lena's stomach turned. But he didn't protect them, did he? Rachel's lip trembled. No. Her voice cracked, and tears finally fell. He said they were broken, that the world hurt them, and he could fix them. I didn't know what that meant. I thought he was helping. I'd hear them crying at night, and he'd tell me they were homesick, that they'd be leaving soon. Lena's throat tightened. And the tapes? Rachel pressed her palms to her face. He told me to hide them after it ended. He said if anyone ever saw them, we'd both go to prison. I was 13, Lena. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted him to love me. Lena stood in stunned silence, feeling as if the air had been sucked out of the room. So you helped him. Rachel looked up sharply. No, I didn't help him. I just kept quiet. Her voice cracked again, low and hollow. After he died, I tried to forget. I thought the house would forget too. But it never does. The floorboards above them groaned, slow and deliberate. Both women froze. Rachel turned pale. He doesn't want us talking about this, she whispered. Mom, he's gone, Lena said, her voice shaking. Rachel shook her head violently. You don't understand. He never left this house. He made sure of that. The air grew colder. A faint scratching echoed from the ceiling just above their heads. Rachel grabbed Lena's hands, her grip desperate. Promise me you'll leave that room alone. Don't touch anything else. Please, for both our sakes. Lena's mind reeled. Her mother's tears, her grandfather's shadow still hanging over them, the whispers that hadn't stopped since the night she moved in. She nodded, but her thoughts said otherwise. Because now she needed to know more, who those women were, what really happened to them, and whether her mother's confession had told the whole truth. As Rachel stood and turned away, wiping her face, Lena noticed something she hadn't before. A faint bruise around her mother's wrist, shaped like fingers. Her breath caught. Rachel noticed her stare and quickly pulled down her sleeve. It's nothing, she murmured. Just an accident. But Lena wasn't convinced. That night, when the house fell silent again, she lay awake, the attic's whispers returning, louder, closer, and this time, they didn't just call her name. They said, she's lying. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. Rachel had gone to the market, leaving Lena alone. The secret room upstairs had been sealed again, or so her mother thought. But curiosity and fear twisted together inside Lena until they became something uncontrollable. She climbed the creaking stairs, her pulse echoing in her ears. The attic air was stale and cold, carrying the faint metallic tang of rust, or blood. She knelt beside the old VHS player she'd found in one of the boxes and inserted the tape labeled Rachel. The screen flickered. Static hissed. And then, movement. A man's heavy breathing filled the room through the speakers. The camera tilted, showing a small, dimly lit room. Lena recognized it instantly, the same one hidden behind the wall. In the corner stood her mother, barely a teenager, her long hair tied back, clutching a rag and bucket. "Rachel," a deep voice said from behind the camera. "You missed a spot." Her mother turned toward the lens, her face pale, eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whispered. Lena's breath hitched. The man chuckled, a low, satisfied sound that made her skin crawl. "You're a good girl. You help Daddy, don't you?" Rachel nodded quickly, scrubbing harder at something on the floor, something dark that wouldn't come off. The camera panned to the left, revealing a woman tied to a chair. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. She looked straight into the camera, into Lena's eyes, as if she could see her across time. "Please," the woman sobbed. "Please, Don't let him hurt me.
Young Rachel froze. The rag slipped from her hand.
Daddy, she's scared,
she said in a trembling voice. Maybe we should let her go. Quiet, he barked. Rachel flinched. The screen jolted as the man moved closer. A hand appeared, thick, gloved, holding something shiny. Lena pressed her palm to her mouth. She didn't want to see, but couldn't stop watching. The woman's voice grew frantic. Rachel, please, you don't have to do this. You're a good girl. Rachel backed away, tears spilling down her face. Daddy, stop! The camera tilted wildly, crashing to the floor. The last thing Lena saw was Rachel's trembling hands reaching out, and then a scream. A sharp, piercing human scream that filled the attic and seemed to bleed through the walls. Static. The tape ended. Lena sat frozen, staring at her reflection in the black screen. Her stomach churned, her skin cold with sweat. Her mother wasn't just a frightened child back then. She was a witness. Maybe even an accomplice. Her mind raced with questions. Who was that woman? Did anyone ever find her? Did her grandfather kill her? And how much did Rachel really remember? Outside, a car door slammed. Rachel was home. Lena yanked the tape out, heart hammering, and stuffed it back into the metal box. She heard her mother calling from downstairs, cheerful and calm, as if nothing in their lives had ever been wrong. Lena, I brought dinner! Lena tried to steady her breathing. The screams from the tape still echoed in her ears. She knew now that this wasn't over, that there was still something buried in that room, so, meeting her mother refused to face. As she switched off the TV, a faint whisper came from the player. A woman's voice, warped and distant. Find me. The sound faded into static. Lena stared at the screen, trembling. Tomorrow, she decided, she would. The house was louder that night. Every creak, every sigh of wind through the cracks seemed amplified, whispering secrets into the dark. Lena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling where faint scratching sounds echoed again, steady, rhythmic, purposeful. She turned over, pressing her pillow against her ears, but the noise persisted. It wasn't just the attic anymore. It was coming from below. Her phone's clock read 2:14 a.m. Rachel's door was shut, the faint glow of her bedside lamp leaking from underneath. Lena's heart raced as she slid quietly out of bed and grabbed the flashlight from her drawer. The floorboards groaned beneath her bare feet as she crept toward the stairs. The house felt heavier now, like it was holding its breath. Halfway down, she heard it again. A slow, dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floorboards. Then a soft thud. "Mom," she whispered. No answer. The air downstairs was colder, damp with the faint smell of earth and decay. Her flashlight flickered as she stepped into the kitchen. Everything looked normal, except for the small door near the pantry. It had always been there, leading to the basement, but she'd never dared to go down alone. The dragging sound came again, from behind it. Lena hesitated, her hand shaking on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed to go back, to wake her mother, to not see what waited below. But curiosity and dread tangled inside her, the same way they had the day she opened the attic wall. She turned the knob. The door creaked open, releasing a breath of cold air that smelled of rot and mildew. She stepped onto the wooden stairs, each one creaking under her weight. The basement light didn't work, so she relied on her flickering beam. The sounds grew louder, not random anymore, but deliberate. A slow shuffle, a whisper, a sigh. "Hello?" she called out softly. Something moved in the shadows, just out of reach of the light. Lena's throat tightened. "Is someone down here?" The basement was cluttered with old furniture, boxes, and broken tools. Dust hung thick in the air, turning every movement into a ghostly shimmer. Her flashlight passed over an old furnace, a cracked mirror, and then a section of wall that looked different. The bricks didn't match,
They were newer, unevenly laid. And right beside them, half covered in cobwebs, was another narrow door, nearly identical to the one she'd found in the attic. Her breath hitched. The sound came again, this time behind the door. Lena reached out, her fingers trembling as she brushed away the dust. The handle turned easily. The door opened with a soft click. Beyond it was a short passage leading upward, lined with old wallpaper that peeled like dead skin. She knew immediately. It led back to the hidden room. Somehow the house had another entrance. But what froze her blood wasn't the passage itself. It was the muddy footprints, fresh ones, leading out of the hidden room. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. The prints were small, almost like her mother's size. But Rachel had been asleep upstairs, hadn't she? She crouched, touching the edge of one. The mud was still wet. A sound behind her, a faint creak from the stairs. She spun around, flashlight trembling. Nothing. Just the empty basement. But when she turned back, the footprints were gone. Her flashlight flickered, the beam cutting out for a split second. And in that instant of darkness, she heard it clearly. A whisper, right behind her ear. "Go back upstairs." She dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, spinning light wildly around the room. The whisper came again, sharper this time. "Now!" Lena stumbled backward, slamming the hidden door shut, her chest heaving. When he finally reached her room, she locked the door and pressed her ear against it. The whispers had stopped. But faintly, beneath the silence, she heard the television in the living room turn on by itself, crackling with static, then a voice. Her grandfather's voice. "You shouldn't have gone down there, Lena." She gasped, backing away as her mother's door opened across the hall. Rachel stood there, pale and trembling, her bare feet covered in fresh mud. Morning came gray and heavy, as if the sun itself was reluctant to rise over the Parker house. Lena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's muddy feet standing in the hallway, and the way Rachel had just turned away, saying nothing, walking back to her room like a ghost who knew she'd been caught. Now the house was quiet again. Too quiet. Rachel was gone. Her bed was made, her shoes missing from the doormat. A note on the kitchen counter read only 2 words. "Stay inside." Lena didn't listen. The events of the night before looped endlessly in her mind. The whispers, the footprints, her grandfather's voice through the static. Something was still hidden here, something her mother feared more than the truth itself. Lena went back to the attic. The air was thicker now, colder. She passed the peeling wallpaper, the unlocked door, and the rotting furniture until her flashlight caught something new. A loose floorboard under the desk in the corner. The dust there was disturbed, as if someone had opened it recently. Her fingers pried at the edge until it lifted with a sharp creak. Inside was an old, sealed envelope. The paper was yellowed and brittle, the handwriting slanted and deliberate. "To the next one who finds this." Her heartbeat quickened. Carefully, she slid her thumb under the flap and unfolded the contents. It wasn't just a note. It was a letter, several pages long, written in her grandfather's familiar scrawl. "If you're reading this, then you found what I left behind. I always knew some. Ian would—" It's in the blood, after all. Curiosity runs through us like a curse. Lena's eyes darted across the page, her breath trembling. The truth is simple. Rachel was never mine by blood. She was one of them. One of the lost girls I brought here. I saw something different in her. She didn't cry like the others. She learned quickly. She obeyed. Lena's stomach turned. I gave her a name. A home. I told her I was her father because that made her easier to love and easier to control. Her hands shook. The letter slipped slightly from her grip, but she forced herself to keep reading.
Over time, I realized she had my instincts, that hunger for order, for justice, even when the law fails. She helped me because she believed it was right. I made her believe it. I made her like me. Tears blurred Lena's vision. Her mother, her whole life, was a lie. When she grew older, she began to remember things. I told her they were dreams. She believed me until the night she tried to free one of them. I had to stop her. She wouldn't stop crying after that. I knew the work couldn't go on forever. There was a long, jagged line of ink across the next paragraph, as if his hand had shaken violently. I chose this house as my tomb. I sealed the room, the tapes, the faces, but I knew someone would open the walls again. The next one always does, because what we bury never stays dead. It waits for the curious. Lena's throat closed. Her pulse pounded in her ears. If Rachel has told you I was a monster, she's only half right. She became my greatest creation, and my greatest mistake. When she finds you reading this, she'll know it's time. The blood never stops calling. The letter ended with a single, chilling line. Finish what I started, Rachel. Lena's vision blurred with tears. Her hands trembled as she lowered the paper. The attic suddenly felt alive. Walls groaning, wind pressing through. Cracks like a whispering breath. A shadow moved near the door. Mom? Rachel stood there, eyes wide, face pale as death. Her hair was damp, her hands still streaked with mud. She didn't look angry. She looked afraid. You weren't supposed to find that, she whispered. Lena clutched the letter to her chest. You're not his daughter, she said shakily. You were one of them. Rachel's lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes flicked toward the open floorboard, the hidden box, the letter. He wanted me to forget, she murmured. I tried, Lena. I really tried. The walls creaked again, louder this time. Something shifted in the shadows behind her mother, a slow movement, like someone walking just out of sight. Rachel took a step closer. Give me the letter, she said quietly. Lena backed away, shaking her head. No, I need to know everything. Her mother's voice hardened. You already do. The whispering started again, soft at first, then louder, overlapping voices filling the attic. Dozens of them, all women. Lena dropped the flashlight. Its beam swung across the walls, illuminating old photographs. Faces of the missing, fluttering slightly as if moved by unseen hands. Rachel's voice was barely a breath now. They're not at rest, Lena. He made sure of that. Lena's pulse hammered. Then we have to end it. Rachel's eyes lifted toward the ceiling, where faint scratching had begun again. We can't, she said, because he's already coming back. The wail of sirens shattered the heavy silence of dawn. Blue and red lights splashed against the cracked windows as two police cruisers rolled to a stop in front of the Parker house. Lena stood outside on the front lawn, arms wrapped around herself, shivering despite the sunlight. Her mother sat on the porch steps, motionless, eyes blank. The letter lay in Lena's trembling hands, sealed again, but still heavy with its truth. Detective Harlan stepped out of the car, a tall man with tired eyes and a voice that carried quiet authority. You the one who made the call? He asked. Lena nodded mutely. Her throat was too dry to speak. He motioned to the officers behind him. Secure the property. Check every room. Rachel looked up suddenly. You don't need to go in there, she said sharply. There's nothing left to find. Harlan's gaze lingered on her. Ma'am, we'll be the judge of that. Lena watched as the officers entered the house, their footsteps echoing through the old structure. Each creak of the floorboards made her flinch. She knew what they were about to find, what she had seen with her own eyes, what her mother had buried under a lifetime of silence. Minutes passed like hours. The wind picked up, carrying the faint hum of whispers through the trees. Mrs. Whitmore stood across the street in her worn shawl, watching everything with her usual, knowing stillness. Then a shout came from inside. "Detective! You'd better see this!" Harlan disappeared through the front door. Lena's stomach twisted. Rachel buried her face in her hands. When he emerged again, his expression had changed, hard, grim, and pale. "We found a hidden room," he said, "behind the attic wall. You knew about it?" Lena hesitated, glancing at her mother. Rachel's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Harlan continued, voice low. "There are remains in there. More than one. We'll need to bring forensics in." Rachel let out a strangled sound, half sob, half laugh, before whispering, "He promised me they were gone. He said he took them away." Lena's chest constricted. "Mom, stop." But it was too late. Rachel's voice broke into a spiral of confession. "I didn't kill them. I swear I didn't. I just cleaned. I thought I was helping him. I thought they were—" Two officers gently pulled her to her feet, murmuring for her to calm down. Lena's vision blurred as they led her mother toward the car. Rachel turned once, her eyes wide and desperate. "Don't let them burn the house," she pleaded. "He's still here. He won't let me leave." Then the door shut, and the car rolled away. The street fell silent again. The whispering wind moved through the eaves of the old house like a sigh of relief, or a warning. Detective Harlan came over, his face softening slightly. "We'll take care of her, Lena, and we'll get answers, I promise." Lena nodded faintly. Her gaze drifted to the attic window. The curtain moved, slow, deliberate, as if someone were standing there, watching. Mrs. Whitmore's voice carried across the yard, thin but clear. "The house always keeps one secret, dear," she said softly. "Don't think it's done with you yet." Lena turned toward her, heart pounding. "What do you mean?" The old woman smiled faintly, eyes glassy with something ancient and sad. "You'll see," she whispered. "You'll see soon enough." The wind rose again, rattling the loose shutters, and from somewhere deep inside the house, behind the walls, beneath the floorboards, came a faint, muffled sound. A woman's voice. "Help me." It had been 3 weeks since the police sealed the house. The yellow tape still fluttered across the gate like a warning, though the world around it had already moved on. Neighbors avoided the street now. The name Parker had become a whisper, another suburban tragedy people preferred not to remember. But Lena couldn't move on. The state had taken her mother for psychiatric evaluation. The detectives called it protective custody, but Lena knew better. Rachel was broken, haunted by ghosts she had helped create. The house was to be cleared, the furniture sold, the property demolished. And yet, something inside it still called to her. That's what brought her back on that overcast afternoon, keys shaking in her hand. The moment she stepped through the front door, the air changed. Colder, heavier, like the house exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Dust drifted in lazy spirals through the slanted light. Every sound echoed. The floor creaked under her steps as she moved through the hallway. The memories came in waves. Her mother's laughter before it curdled into silence. The night of the screams, the flashing lights. Lena's only goal was to pack what little she owned. Her clothes, some books, a few photographs that hadn't yet been taken for evidence. But the longer she stayed, the stronger that pull became. The same magnetic dread that had once led her to the attic. She paused by the staircase, staring upward. The air around her shifted, colder at her back. Then she heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Lena." Her breath hitched. She turned sharply, scanning the room. Nothing, just the echo of her heartbeat. She forced a shaky laugh. It's just the wind, she muttered to herself. But the voice came again, this time from the wall beside her, closer. Lena, help me. Her hands trembled. No, she whispered. No, you're gone. They found you. You're gone. The wallpaper rippled slightly, as if something beneath it shifted. The whisper deepened, raspier now. He's still here. Lena stumbled back, heart pounding. Who are you? Silence. Then, a single knock from inside the wall. She clapped a hand over her mouth. The sound had come from the same spot where the hidden passage once began, the same place she'd torn open weeks ago. But the police had sealed it shut with heavy boards and nails. No one could be inside. Her flashlight flickered to life. The boards were cracked. One nail hung loose. Please, the voice whispered, softer now. Don't leave me. Lena's pulse raced. She took one trembling step closer, reaching out, then stopped. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. He's still here. He won't let me leave. Tears welled in her eyes. I can't, she whispered. I can't do this again. A gust of cold air swept through the hall, slamming a door somewhere deep in the house. The sound reverberated like a heartbeat. The boards on the wall shuddered. Then, from behind her, another sound, a long, slow creak. The front door. Lena froze. She hadn't opened it. Her flashlight beam quivered as she turned toward the sound. The door now stood ajar, swinging slightly with the wind. Beyond it, the pale light of dusk bled into the hallway, and from the open doorway came a faint shadow, tall, human, unmoving. Lena stepped back toward the staircase, every instinct screaming to run. The voice in the wall whispered one final time, soft and mournful. He's waiting. The door creaked wider. Lena's scream caught in her throat as the light flickered, and the screen faded to black.